Hello, welcome to Papa Nick's Music. I am, as always, your host, Papa Nick Lewis, and this week we're talking about time capsules. What the hell is a time capsule? I hear you ask. A few weeks ago, before I got derailed by all of that, does he lip sync or does he not lip sync nonsense? A few weeks ago, I kicked off my Fall of Hall & Oates series, which is going wonderfully, by the way, with a ranking of Hall & Oates' top 10 singles. And when I was talking about Rich Girl, I mentioned that Rich Girl is one of those songs that as soon as I hear it, as soon as I hear those opening electric piano chords, and as soon as I hear Daryl Hall singing, "You're a rich girl," as soon as I hear that, I rocket back in time. I am now all of a sudden sitting in the front seat of the car and just pulled into the convenience store there in the town where I grew up. It was a rural town. We had two convenience stores, one at each end of town. And we pulled in and just was about to shut the engine off, and that song was playing on the radio station. It takes me back every time, being in the parking lot of the Superette. It's a reliable time trigger, okay? It's one of those songs that every time I hear it, I go back in time. And I thought, okay, well, let's talk about a few more of these. This is, by the way, this is not a top 10. This is not a ranking. I'm not putting them in any sort of evaluative context. These are just songs that have a very strong time trigger for me when I listen to them. Cool? I've got 6 of them. Oh, it's going to be fun. Because I'm not talking about relative quality, I'm not talking about whether these songs are good, and we're not worried about the subjectivity notice this week, so I can just jump in and talk about the songs themselves. First of all, the first of my 6 time capsules, though I'm not ranking them. When I was young, when I was in school, I was in the band. I was in marching band, concert band, from 4th grade up until I graduated from high school. And every year, from 8th grade on, every year we would play music every time there was an event. The homecoming, for example, we were going to crown the homecoming queen. So all of the class attendants and the maid of honor and all these people, they're coming out, they're meeting their escorts on the football field, and they're going out to the middle of the field, and then finally the homecoming queen and the king come out, and they go out to the middle of the field. And while this is all happening, while the announcer is telling the crowd who the people are, and everybody is, oh, we're oh so pretty, and get the camera and all of that, the band would be at our end of the bleachers, and we would be playing a song. It'd be on a little loop. They picked a song that had the right sound to it, but that was also easy to loop, so that, because we didn't know how long it was going to take to do this, we would just play until we got the high sign, and then we'd stop. And the song that we played was "Cherish." And so, to this day, whenever I hear the song "Cherish," either the original Association version from 1966, the 1966 album, and then Along Comes the Association, or the David Cassidy version from the 1971 Cherish album, every time I hear that song, I go back to sitting in the stands, playing that song on a loop while people are staggering out to the middle of the football field. That and Pomp and Circumstance that we played for graduation, those 2 songs, oh man, they trigger me like nobody's business. I'm immediately back in the stands of the football stadium. So my first time capsule is "Cherish." My second time capsule is, okay, so I grew up in rural eastern Oklahoma, and this was in the olden days when if you bought a car that was not a top-of-the-line model, then there were certain things that you just didn't have in your car. You didn't have power windows. No, there's a crank. You can roll your window up and down. You didn't have power locks. No, you thunk the little thing down or lift it up if you were trying to get out of your car. Some of us didn't have power steering or power brakes. That was always exciting. Some of us didn't have air conditioning in our cars. That was always frustrating. And many of us had AM radios, and that was it. Which meant that if you were hanging out with your friends, riding around town, driving around aimlessly, because what the hell else you going to do? You live in a small town, you don't have anywhere to go, but at the same time, you don't want to stay home. So you go out and you get in somebody's car and you drive around all night. And if you're listening to an AM radio, the pickings were slim. And so, you'd tune up and down, and there were a few places where if the weather conditions were just right, if just the right amount of cloud cover, you could catch those AM signals as they were bouncing along the bottoms of the clouds. And it was going to be a good night if we could pull in WLS from Chicago. Because back in those days, the AM WLS radio station was an actual rock station. It wasn't the cockamamie conservative talk nonsense that they do now. Ben Shapiro, seriously, WLS, have you no pride in your storied past? But anyway, but it was a rock station back then, and so if you could just get it the dial tuned in just right to catch those radio waves as they came bouncing from the whatever sphere they were bouncing off of, you could pull in a decent radio station. We also occasionally got a station from Memphis. I don't remember the call letters. A station from New Orleans. I don't remember the call letters. But WLS in Chicago, I remember those call letters. And it seemed invariably, as soon as we'd get it zeroed in, the song that they were playing, or at least the song that I associate the most vividly with it, was from their Fool for the City album from 1975, Fog Hat, and their smash single, Slow Ride. To this day, when I hear Slow Ride, any part of Slow Ride, because I know this whole song, I hear any part of it, and it's like I'm tuning in that radio, trying to get WLS just right, so that I can get a song or two maybe before it fades back away. So my second time capsule, Slow Ride by Foghat. Now, speaking of radio, one of the things that you could do back in the day, in my youth, if you wanted to listen to a song whenever you wanted to listen to it, that meant you had to buy a copy of it. So you had to buy the single, or you had to buy the album, or you had to know somebody who owned it so that you could borrow it and make a tape of it yourself. If there was a third option, if you were of a mind, if you had a radio that was in some way attached to the tape deck, if you had a radio integrated into your stereo, for example, then you could tape directly off of the radio. And some people would do this. They'd go ahead and, like tape a half hour of a radio station, and then they could play that. I never really saw the point of doing that, but different strokes for different folks, as they say. But at one point, somewhere along the line, many years ago, one of those stations, WLS or something like that, was playing a documentary series that was the history of the Beatles. And my older brother, I've got two brothers, the brother who's next to me in age and the brother who is significantly older than I am. All of my siblings are older than I am because I'm the youngest of the family. So I've got my brother and my older brother. My older brother managed to catch pretty much the beginning of one of the episodes of this, and when he realized what it was, he scrambled around, he found a blank cassette, popped it into his cassette deck, and he recorded it. And so at some point later, this would have been maybe 73, 74, something along those lines, the tape finally made its way down to me. And I used to listen to that tape with great frequency because this was the only copy I had of several of the songs that were on this, that were played. Now, this particular episode of the documentary was the beginning of their solo years, shortly after their breakup. I want to say it started with Let It Be and then moved on to their first couple solo albums. or their first solo releases, I should say. Um, and I was particularly thrilled to have this um, taped copy of that episode from the documentary series, because that tape had a couple of songs from Paul McCartney's solo album Ram. Paul and Linda McCartney's Ram. I didn't have a copy of Ram. I didn't own a copy of Ram until, oh man, well into my college years before I managed to track down a copy of that thing. But this had a couple of songs on it. It had Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, and so like, I finally I can listen to Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey whenever I want to. I just have to find that spot on the tape. And more importantly, the more reliable trigger. One of my favorite songs off of Ram, and to this day, every time I listen to it, I'm transported to being in my bedroom late at night. You know, I'm under the covers listening to this, trying to make it as quiet as possible because I was the insomniac in the house, and so I'm the only person awake. Man, I'm trying not to wake anybody else up, and I'm listening to this, and I'm listening to the backseat of my car. Oh my God, do I love that song. It's one of my favorite songs on the album, and every time I hear it, I flash back to being in probably fourth grade probably, sitting under the covers late at night listening to that tape. Oh, I love that song. Now, some of these time capsules, I'm not the only one who feels this way. There are certain songs that are just, I think they're emblematic of a time period. And when I first started thinking about doing this list, I came up with a bunch of instrumentals that were just the hallmark of, the early to mid 70s. Love's Theme from the Love Unlimited Orchestra, the Barry White Orchestra. The Hustle by Van McCoy. There was another one that I was thinking. Breezin' by George Benson, right? These are songs, they were really popular, they were played a lot, and so they didn't have much in the way of a shelf life. I mean, they did their job and then they kind of faded. But when they were working like dogs. And the song that I think of when I think of that kind of time capsule, when I think of the instrumental that was insanely popular at the time, it's still a relatively popular song, but it just screams 1977 to me. And that is Chuck Mangione's Feel So Good off of his album of the same name. I love that song. And every time I listen to it, I'm back in junior high. Every time. I love it. But if we're talking time capsules, these top two, these last two, I need to say last two because I'm not ranking these. These last two are the ones that I am automatically thought of. One that I think is specific to me, and one that I think anybody who is my rough age is going to agree with. The one that is specific to me is, again, it's the 74 neighborhood, 74, 75, something like that. I used to play in the upstairs of our house. The upstairs, at this point, my brother and I shared the bedroom at the back of the house. My older brother had the bedroom at the front of the house. There was also a small room that was more like a dressing room, and then the bathroom. That was the layout of the upstairs, in case you're trying to visualize the floor plan. But my brother and I were playing in the hall upstairs between our bedroom and our older brother's bedroom. And, sometimes we'd be setting up Hot Wheels tracks and have it run down the stairs. Sometimes we'd be playing with G.I. Joes or Army men, having a battle out in the hallway, whatever. But we liked playing in that area. And there were times when, as we were playing, we would be listening to music, my older brother's stereo, because he had a fairly decent stereo, and he had records, and so if he's not there, we'd go in and we'd play one of his records while we were playing. And one of the records that we liked to play, to this day, it's one of my favorite albums. And it is one of my favorite albums because I imprinted on that album, or that album imprinted on me, I guess, during that time frame when we were playing, when my brother and I were playing in the hallway there. And the album was Tres Hombres by ZZ Top. And the song on that album that is the most reliable time capsule, the song that when I hear it, I can smell the slightly mothbally attic aroma that came wafting in every once in a while because of all of the storage areas off of these bedrooms. I can feel the ambient temperature of the room. I can see the carpeting on the wall and the stairway, and I mean, it is vivid. And that is every time I hear the song Master of Sparks. It's not LaGrange. It's not Waiting for the Bus and Jesus Just Left Chicago. No. Master of Sparks. That's the one that takes me back every time. I mean, it is whiplash inducing how quickly I go back in time whenever I hear that song. And that song is the main reason why I love this album to this day. But if we're talking time capsule, I think the ultimate time capsule, and again, we're in that same time period, it's 1976. And in 1976, I mean, if you wanted to nominate a song that sounds like 1976, I don't think you could do any better than Chicago's massive hit, If You Leave Me Now, from Chicago 10. Every time I hear that song, that opening with the strings and that French horn, that womp 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 womp. Oh, I'm automatically back sitting in the cafeteria on a rainy morning before school starts, waiting to go into the band room because I was in band. Band was first period, so we'd wait. If the weather was bad, we'd wait in the cafeteria because the band room was just off the cafeteria. And listening, somebody had a radio going, and I listening to that song. I mean, it's just, If You Leave Me Now is, I've got to think that when archaeologists, thousands of years from now, are doing digs and trying to uncover what the 20th century society was like, they're going to somehow find a way. They're going to find this piece of vinyl. They're going to figure out how to play it, and they're going to put it on, and it's wah, 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 wah. I mean, it's going to be, that is 1976. I mean, come on. But when I think of songs that exist in time, songs that represent a time to me, songs that reliably take me back to those times, these are the kinds of songs I'm thinking about. What do you think about? What triggers you? What takes you back to your childhood? What takes you back to your young adulthood? Drop that comment down below. I always love hearing from you. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd appreciate it if you click the like button. While you're down there clicking, go ahead and click the subscribe button if you've not already done so. It costs you nothing, but it means the world to me, so I thank you very much. If you subscribe, go ahead and click the bell for notifications. The YouTube folks like that, so on their behalf, I thank you. Thanks again for hanging out with me today, and I hope that the rest of your day is uneventful. See you soon.